Hey guys, it's Katie, and I'm here today to talk about why there's no such thing as an original work. If you guys don't already know, I'm like major history, classics, whatever nerd, and I'm here to tell you that there's literally no such thing as an original work. Some of the original epic poems, the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Aeneid, you name it, were actually written in as kind of like fanfic of the original work. A lot of authors from the very, very beginning of time, from the ancient period, picked up certain elements from books that they liked or that they wanted to see more of and basically kind of wrote their own story surrounding them and kind of carried over through periods of time. Virgil wrote the Aeneid and he took bits and pieces of the Iliad that he liked or wanted to see expanded upon, and he just wrote his own story about it. And no one batted an eye or really thought about it until, you get the lovely classicists thrown into the mix and you start to see it because it's pretty obvious. But then also, this kind of idea it did not just stem from the ancients, it carried on through time. So for instance, Dante's Inferno. Dante was enamored and loved his mentor, who was Virgil. And as we know, Virgil wrote the Aeneid. Well, Dante decided to take elements and take his mentor and someone that he admired and throw him into his own work and make him be his spiritual guide through the divine realms. And it's just really amusing how just little things here and there will inspire someone to write things. Another perfect example of this, Shakespeare. He borrowed a lot, and I mean a lot, from the ancients, particularly ancient Rome. Romeo and Juliet, based on a myth from Ovid's Metamorphoses called Pyramus and Thisbe. It is literally the same story. Read Pyramus and Thisbe, which was written several years prior, and then read Romeo and Juliet and come talk to me and scream at me about how similar and basically how they are the same, because it's just fascinating. But the thing that I've come to realize is that while other authors will take certain aspects, sometimes verbatim, from other authors, they do it enough to their overall story that it doesn't really detract and things like that. But also you need to think about, there are only so many ideas out there. A lot of people don't realize that most fantasy and most fantasy tropes originate from Tolkien. And I did a whole video about J.R.R. Tolkien and his life and his kind of inspiration and the works that he did and things, and I'll link that up above for you guys. But there's so many people out there that don't realize that Tolkien wrote and created a lot of tropes that we enjoy today. Game of Thrones was heavily, heavily influenced by Tolkien's works. So was Harry Potter in a lot of ways. Like, there is this semi-famous post out there about someone writing a review of The Lord of the Rings on some site, and they're literally talking about how they think Tolkien stole all this stuff from J.K. Rowling. They're like, there's so many similarities, and I'd love to hear Tolkien explain himself, and like just all of this stupid stuff. When you realize that, no, it's the other way around, and Tolkien is now dead and can't explain himself, and also doesn't need to explain himself because, the usual. But then there's also been lawsuits over certain ideas and certain concepts, like the Da Vinci Code, for instance. There are several lawsuits affiliated with Dan Brown's works, particularly the Da Vinci Code, and it turns out that the opposing party ended up losing because you cannot copyright an idea. An idea is something that is inherent to someone else, and you can do so many things with an idea, and it just really stems back to that idea that there is no such thing as an original thought, idea, whatever. Prime example, you go up to someone and you say, don't think about purple elephants. What's the thing that you automatically think about? Purple elephants. There is a reason for that. And it's like that idea, while it was not originally your idea, it was planted there by something that someone said or told you not to think about. And I just find that whole concept of how we get ideas for things to be absolutely fascinating. And so, I mean, it's amusing to me when a lot of people out there read a book and they're like, oh, I've read this book before. There's nothing original about it. They just borrowed from someone else or they wrote whatever. And it's interesting to me because while they might believe their idea is real and they might believe their idea is original, because I know for a fact there are some authors out there, I'm not saying this applies to everyone, but there are some authors out there who don't read other people's works for a reason. Like they read maybe works that are outside of the genre that they write in for whatever reason, but they don't read people who are kind of falling within their genre. And so, I mean, I'm sure there are going to be some overlap. There is going to be some tension about things like this. But it just is amusing to me because just all the way back to ancient times, all the way up to today, there's always been this taking a little bits of people's things here and there. And I mean, you see it primarily done in fantasy, but I also just was at Goodwill the other day with a friend and we were walking around and I dragged her into the book section like I do. And it was just amusing to me. Like I saw 3 separate copies of 50 Shades of Grey. I saw 1 Harry Potter book. I saw about like 3 sets of the Twilight Saga. And I saw a bunch of books about like political figures. Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton are prime examples of people that I saw. And it was just, I was noticing a theme of the same books or the same types of books showing up. And also there were a lot of religious texts that were in the fiction section. And it's interesting to me the types of books that people tend to give away. And the books, there were just the fact that there were so many different types of the same book. We might have seen one book that was about one specific thing, and then someone did like a spin-off series of something that they read in that book. It's just amusing to me that that's something that keeps popping up. You know what I mean? So, I mean, basically, I guess the big takeaways from this video adventure is there's always going to be a work or an idea that seems similar or almost the same as someone else. I mean, we see it right now with the Six of Crows duology and the Gilded Wolves by Roshni Chokshi. A lot of people compare the two and they say that they're similar and that they have the same elements in some ways, like found family and the fact that it's a heist. Those 2 specific elements of the book does not mean that Roshni Chokshi stole the idea from Bardugo. It just means she had a similar idea that just so happened to be similar to that. Another example with the titles between Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi and Of Blood and Bone, I think it is, by Nora Roberts. I mean, there was a whole controversy surrounding that. And it just goes to show you that after a while, nothing is original. You can just take something and put your own unique twist on it. Or you might have a similar title or sometimes even the same title. But there's nothing against that. There's nothing out there that says you can't have the same title of a book. Honestly, I mean, the fact that when I picked up a book the other day when I was in the bookstore. There's a book there called Dragon Keeper, which I picked up. And then you look at Robin Hobb's book and it's called The Dragon Keeper. I mean, it's just interesting because there are so many books out there that have similar or the same titles. And 95% of the time, no one bats an eye. But when it comes to the actual content of the book or the stories, people are all up in arms about it sometimes, or make a need to actually point it out and really go after the author and the creator. And it's the same with music. I mean, there are certain times where it is a blatant sampling of someone's work. But then there are other times where it's just, there are only a certain amount of notes and certain amount of combination of notes that there might be a combination that sounds the same or similar to someone's in a different way. Or you could write it in a different key and it could sound similar. A prime example of this is listening to Brave by Sarah Bareilles and Roar by Katy Perry. They literally sound the same. If you really get down to it and you can listen to it, it sounds exactly the same. But when it really comes down to it, if there was to be a lawsuit about it, which I know there never was, but what they would do is they would separate the instruments, separate the lyrics from the actual music and bring in the sheet music and really pick it apart and listen to the different elements of it to see if it really was stolen. Because it does sound, like on its face, it does sound the same. But when it comes down to it, is it the same? We don't know because it's never been litigated. People have never really gone that hard into it. However, you look at the Robin Thicke song that was compared with, I don't remember the name of the song right off the top of my head, but that one was proven to be stolen. And there was a lot of stuff that was around it. So I mean, really, if you sit back and think about it, there really is no such thing as an original work, original piece of music, original idea. People are going to have similar ideas to you. What it really boils down to, though, is how do you, as a creator, make it your own? How do you make a trope or an idea that has been so overused and so tired unique, so that you stand out and give it a fresh spin? And I think that's really what it comes down to. That plus a lot of other elements, but really, how do you bring your own unique spin to it? I guess the big upshot of this whole video is just kind of what I've been saying. There's no such thing as an original work, but you can put your own unique spin on it, and that is what's going to make you stand apart from people who fit themselves into the same cookie cutter mold. I don't know. I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say about this down below, if you have similar feelings or thoughts on it, or if you feel very differently than me about it. Definitely feel free to leave me a comment down below about it. But other than that, you guys know the drill. I have both of my social media links down below in the description. I have a Twitter, which is @ASeaOfTomes, which is the same as my handle here. And I also have a Goodreads where you guys can go follow me and check out what I've been reading and check out my progress and see my general thoughts on things before I come over here and scream at you about it. But other than that, I'll catch you later in another video soon. Bye!